No.
Yeah, you come at me with the Super Bowl losses. Guess what? Yeah? Well, I bet you didn't know that Bill Parcells and Marv Levy have identical postseason win-loss records.
Not just winning percentage, but like the same number of wins and losses.
11-8.
No ties.
No ties.
It's the playoffs.
11-8. There you go. With us now on the West Shore Hotline, Justin Mello, the Draft Network. Great time of year. Justin, thanks for making time for us.
Well, pleasure's all mine. We're right around the corner here.
Yes, and this thing can't start. I've read the rules until Tennessee says so. At 1 overall. Take us through your perspective, if you would, Justin, on their process here. It turned into, to my ears, maybe a month ago, like, oh, yeah, okay, Cam Ward. Maybe around the pro day. Is that how you see it, and has it maybe looked like that to you for longer?
Well, yeah, a little earlier than that, I would say. Early on in the process, it certainly felt like they were going to trade the pick or that they were going to take Abdul Carter, number 1 overall. Where things started to shift was at the NFL Combine. That was the first time they had a chance to meet with Cam Ward. Remember, he wasn't at any of the All-Star games, right? Didn't go to the Senior Bowl, wasn't at Shrine, where, again, Shedeur Sanders was, and they met with him there. But the Combine was their first opportunity to meet with Ward. They had the formal, right, the 18-minute formal. Not very long. That's the rules if you're not familiar. NFL allows 18 minutes. They were really impressed with him in those 18 minutes and just his attention to detail when it comes to playing quarterback. So what did they do from there? They scheduled the top 30 visit, the in-person. They brought him to Nashville strategically before free agency opened, by the way, because at that point it was still, are we going to go after a Sam Darnold? Are we going to get into that bidding war? What are we doing at quarterback? Well, he comes to Nashville. He blows that visit out of the water. When they get him on the whiteboard, they're just so impressed with his attention to detail when it comes to playing quarterback. That's really when they started sort of locking it in. Pro Day helped solidify it. A couple days after that, they went back to Nashville. They went back to Miami less than a week later for a private workout with him. The team owner, Amy Adams-Strunk, flew the private jet to that private workout. I mean, that doesn't happen, right? That's how sold they were on him at the time. Only continued solidifying it. You can write it in pen, if you will. It's Cam Ward at number 1 overall.
How good a prospect do you think he is?
I think there are things he does incredibly well. I think the off-script ability is what really, kind of gives him superstar potential, if you will, the ability to throw the football from different arm angles, to maneuver the pocket. Now, mind you, they're coming off of Will Levis, okay, a guy with all the physical ability but cannot maneuver a pocket to save his life. I mean, the truth is that if you watch the tape this past year, they were bad up front, but Will Levis brought a lot of sacks upon himself, and he can't create outside of structure. Cam Ward does those things at an incredibly high level, right? Maneuvering the pocket, beating pressure, buying himself time, again, making the throws off script, different arm angles. Where he gets into trouble is sometimes, you guys see it, sometimes they're in Buffalo. I mean, Josh Allen's a superstar, but once in a while those throws become an interception, right? When you're trying to create off script. Mm-hmm. He's got a little bit of that. But they were mostly impressed, again, with the football IQ. And when you turn the tape on, really dive into the X's and O's of his game, you'd be surprised how much you can identify with him kind of noticing pre-snap, post-snap, executing quickly. There's more of that stuff in his game than he gets credit for.
With Justin Mello of the Draft Network on the Titans, who pick first. By the way, Levis and his future, I don't know. I don't think it's necessarily ideal to have him, just as young as he is himself, as a backup to Ward, assuming Ward even plays, as early as week 1. Any thought on that? Like, are the Titans like-minded? Maybe you might think trying to make a move with him, or maybe I'm reading it wrong.
Oh, I don't think there's a chance in heck that he's on their roster in 2025. Okay. I mean, look, you read the tea leaves, right? They went out and got 2 veteran quarterbacks in free agency. Now, one of them's not guaranteed to be on the roster in Tim Boyle, but one of them probably is in Brandon Allen. They went out and got this guy who, by the way, used to play for their head coach, Brian Callahan, in Cincinnati. That screams to me he is our veteran backup. A guy who's not going to threaten Cam Ward to take the job, but knows the offense and is going to help him learn the ropes in training camp because he has played in this system before. No, they're going to trade Will Levis. They'll probably give him for almost anything at this point because they've got no leverage. But worst case scenario, look what happened with Malik Willis last year in a somewhat similar situation where they knew Will Levis was their guy. They let this thing play out. He played preseason. He played training camp. Eventually, they were able to flip him for a draft pick to the Green Bay Packers.
Yeah, that makes sense. I've long thought, like we talked early in Josh Allen's career here, Cam Newton was available. Stylistically, there were enough similarities there, but like, if you want your young guy to get a clear runway here to develop, you do not want someone of that stature or even Levis's stature there, because there's still going to be maybe even pockets within the team, let alone the fan base, that like the minute it goes bad for the kid, we got this other guy here and he was this good and whatever, just clear that out of the way. So with all that said, Justin, would you expect Ward to play right away? Do you think that's the plan for him?
I would, yes. They just, again, assuming it's too awkward of a situation, I think, to keep Will Levis on the roster. And they're not going to start, like Brandon Allen was the veteran I was referring to who played under Brian Callahan in Cincinnati. They signed him in free agency. They're not going to start Brandon Allen in week one, are they? Right? By no stretch of the imagination. And Kent Ward, keep in mind, like people talk about, you've got to be ready to play. This guy played like 5 years in college, right? This is a very experienced. This is not a Jordan Love, coming out of Utah State. Look at last year. I mean, Bo Nix, a lot of football at Oregon and Auburn, came in ready to play. Look at Jaden Daniels, came in ready to play. Cam Ward certainly got the experience to be a week one starter. And again, he's impressed them when they put him on the whiteboard. The football IQ is not going to be an issue.
With Justin Mello, how tempting do you think, or maybe it's in the past tense now, tempted might the Titans have been by either Travis Hunter or Abdul Carter? Everybody loves these players. It's kind of the age-old, but the quarterback is so much more important to your success. I wonder how close you might think they ever were to going in those other directions.
Well, I think that was the direction up until, a couple of things, until Cam Ward blew them away, right, again, throughout the process. Now, this didn't make up their mind, the next point I'm about to make, but the Abdul Carter injury, you've got to think, took him out of the running at number one overall. I mean, his agent, classic agent speak, when he wasn't working out at the combine, he's going to be ready for pro day and he's going to put on a show. Well, then he wasn't ready for pro day, right? Like, you can take that at 2, 3, 4, 5 overall even, but you can't take it at 1. And in the Titans situation, I know it's a new regime, but people forget they took an injured guy a couple of years ago in the first round in Caleb Farley, and it just blew up in their faces in a major, major way. A lot of the scouts are still there from that Caleb Farley error. So they can't go down that road. They've had a lot of busts in the first round under previous GMs. I mean, the Isaiah Wilson thing, they just can't go down that road where it's an injury guy. There's a question there. With Carter's recovery being so much lengthier than expected, I think that would have taken him out of the running. Now, again, Cam Ward did his job and sold them on him throughout the process. But if he didn't, it would have been trade down or it would have been Travis Hunter.
We started on quarterback here because, of course, the Titans had the first overall pick. I'm curious, Justin, what do you think about the rest of the quarterback? You mentioned Shedeur Sanders at one point early on here in our conversation. What do you think about the rest of the quarterback class, and how many do you think will go on Thursday?
I don't think it's a particularly strong one, and you're getting all the typical smoke signals this type of year with Jackson Dart, Jalen Milroe is going to attend the draft, Tyler Shook out of Louisville is a guy that some people in league circles are high on. I'm going to call BS on a lot of this. I mean, maybe I'll look like a fool next Thursday, but I think it's 2 quarterbacks in round 1, and that's it. I think it's the 2 that we thought of from the very beginning in Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders. And even on Shedeur, it's hard to say where at this point, right? Like, I don't think the Raiders are going to make that move at 6. They invested in Geno Smith, and they want to win now. Believe it or not, with an aging coach in Pete Carroll, who's not really into the whole rebuild thing at this stage in his coaching career. I think New Orleans at 9, there's an underdog shot there, especially with what just happened to Derek Carr, potentially missing this entire season with a shoulder injury. And then you get into the trade-up candidates. I don't think it's going to be Cleveland or the Giants at 2 or 3. That's going to be Travis Hunter and Abdul Carter. But maybe one of those teams comes back up If Cleveland get Travis Hunter at 2, which is the expectation, imagine them coming back up and pairing them back together. Maybe the Giants make that move and come back up after taking Abdul Carter at 3. Or maybe it's someone like Pittsburgh, who are still playing the waiting game with Aaron Rodgers. But as of right now, I don't think it's as straightforward as people thought it was going to be on Shedeur, and I don't think there's going to be more than 2 quarterbacks in the first round.
With Justin Mello, I feel like the running back conversation this year has been a couple of different things. Everybody loves the depth of talent at that position. Everybody loves Genty. The Genty comps are to other historically great prospects, not to other running backs in this class, it seems. Then you have this one, too, is just like where we're at in the NFL, Justin, in assessing running back value. I mean, for years, we just kind of put it all down, and then running backs stopped getting drafted in the first round. But this is a year I think that's going to test that. Would you agree?
I do think you're going to see at least 2 of them in the first round. Now, you'll have some teams who are going to say, it's such a deep class, why would I take a non-premium now when I can get one in? I mean, guys who are going to go in the 5th round this year at running back are 3rd-round picks last year, right? So you're going to get some teams who are going to be willing to take advantage of how deep the class is. But when it comes to a guy like Genty, he is different, right? You can't just say it's a deep class and pair him in there because I've spoken to teams that think he has Hall of Fame potential. How many players at the position really have Hall of Fame potential at any position, any given year? So he really is special and has separated himself. And the other one that I keep hearing is Omarion Hampton out of North Carolina. I think he's the one that's going to go probably earlier than people realize. I think the Chicago Bears will be really tempted there. I think the Dallas Cowboys might be a little tempted if he's still there. I think the Raiders might be the ones that take Genty at number 6. When I think of Pete Carroll and I think of the way he played winning football in Seattle, it was running the ball, right? It was Marshawn Lynch. It was kind of keeping the passing attempts down, having a stable. They were the worst team in the league last year running the football, and they don't have anything in the room now. So that screams they're going running back early. But I think the Cowboys and the Bears are other teams in the top 12 that will consider it. I think the Bears are sneaky there. I believe they're picking at number 10. You got a new head coach. Remember, and Ben Johnson, who took Jahmyr Gibbs or had Jahmyr Gibbs. They took him early a couple years ago. They were criticized for it. But like heck, if they didn't make that work, with him and David Montgomery as a 1-2 punch. Ben Johnson doesn't have that in Chicago right now. So watch out for the Bears next Thursday, potentially taking a back at number 10.
Do you think Jacksonville might be possible for him, Genty, at 5?
I would be surprised. I think they like what they've got. This past year, I don't think Etienne was quite as good as they expected him to be. But they had that other kid in there that ran the football really well for them. They've got a 1-2 punch. I think they're going to like something else that's on the board at number 5 when they come on the clock. I think if a pass rusher is there, I think more so an interior guy, but Mason Graham is probably what I would predict at this point for them at number 5. I think they would consider a Jalen Walker if he's there. Certainly we're not expecting Travis Hunter or Abdul Carter to be there, but they would sprint the card to the podium if they are. But I think they're likelier to go with like a Mason Graham, a Jalen Walker, maybe even a Will Johnson, the cornerback, because they couldn't stop a nosebleed against the pass last year. Jacksonville could, and they've got still got some serious holes there in the defensive backfield, even after free agency.
Seeing as how Mike brought up Jacksonville, let's just take a run through the Titans' entire division. Tennessee starting over at quarterback anyway, so we'll see how long that takes to get up and running. Jacksonville obviously has Lawrence and committed big money to him, but that's been rocky. New coach now again. Houston took a step back after the season before. Like, they were a darling at this time last year, I think, everywhere. And they had a good year, but they didn't ascend to, Kansas City, Buffalo, Baltimore region of the AFC. And then you've got the Colts. Maybe they're the most interesting, considering what they invested in Anthony Richardson just 2 years ago, and now are sort of, waffling. There's Daniel Jones. There's going to be a competition. The division seems, Houston's there, and they look maybe like an immovable object for the time being, but the rest of it seems pretty up in the air.
Yeah, look, the Titans are hoping they can get Cam Ward to come in and have a Jaden Daniels. Remember, Jacksonville and Houston, before Jacksonville won that division, they were the worst team in the division, right? They came out of nowhere with Trevor Lawrence. before Houston won that division with C.J. Stroud, they were the worst team in that division, right? And they came out of nowhere with C.J. The Titans are hoping Cam Ward has a similar impact. I'll say this, with Houston, one of the most confusing off seasons I've seen this summer. I don't know what they've done on the offensive line. I mean, I don't know how deep in the weeds you want to get into that, but it was a disaster last year, especially on the interior. I don't know what, provoked them to come in and say, it was terrible. Let's trade the Pro Bowl left tackle and Laramie Tunzel and figure out what else we're doing up front. I mean, not many teams picking as late as Houston are that you could say they definitely have to do something. The Houston Texans have to take an offensive lineman there in the first round, and they've got to come away with multiple of them because the plan hasn't made any sense. I mean, CJ was sacked more than any quarterback in the league last year, and they've only gotten worse.
I guess there's two ways of looking at that. When your line is bad and you dump everybody, why?
Well,
they're going to get better, but they were bad.
They dumped the good one, though, right? Like, you don't dump the good one. They dumped the Pro Bowl left tackle.
Yeah, fair enough. Bulldog, Indianapolis, you thinking about them too?
Yeah, Jones and Richardson, and I don't know. It felt like when Richardson got full disclosure here, Justin, Mike and I both were crushing on Richardson. I said I would have taken him 1 overall. I just loved the talent so much, and probably images of Josh Allen and his development dancing around in my head, and maybe Indy's too. That's been really rocky. What do you think happens there?
I mean, they're souring for a reason, right? I mean, the decision last year, I mean, I understand, it was an inexperienced decision, but the decision to pull himself out of a game because he was tired rubbed a lot of people the wrong way, right? And understandably so. I mean, that is a rookie mistake that you just cannot afford, right? And they're going to try to, have him learn from it and get better. But they bring in Daniel Jones, and what they're saying, they mean it. It's going to be a legitimate competition. I mean, you can't love where that's at, right? 2 years into this thing. And then and that's not just it, right? Like, it's not just the situation of the decision to pull himself. He completed 47.7% of his passing attempts last year. I mean, it was the most inconsistent tape in the league. He would hit a deep ball out of nowhere. I'm sure. I mean, you guys saw it in the AFC. He would hit a deep ball out of nowhere, and then he misses a 3-yard dig, a 3-yard slant. Right? Like, there was just no consistency, throw to throw, not just game to game. 47% passer, and then he's been injured as well, right? He got injured a bunch of times in his rookie year. So there are a lot of reasons why they're starting to waffle and say, hey, we're legitimately worried about this. We're going to bring in a veteran, and he's got to earn the job. It's a shame the way that it's gone. I mean, look, everyone was in love with the potential. I mean, he had probably the best combine performance I've ever seen, right? A size, weight, height, speed perspective. But there just hasn't been enough consistency there from a leadership perspective, a health perspective, or from a throwing the football perspective. So there's pretty good reason they're starting to waffle here.
Justin, before you leave us, do you have a Bills thought? They pick 30, and as much as we love the draft, sorry for this, but it's kind of defensive linemen every day, all day, maybe a corner. Not quite as sexy as other years where we talked about, wide receiver constantly. And, sometimes we got that result like last year, other times not. But, again, consensus on this team has been, pretty much defense from almost everybody. Agree?
Yeah, I thought I was coming in to only talk Bills draft today, to be honest with you. And I came ready. I do think it's going to be a front seven defender. I mean, you look at a couple things. My recent mock draft, Bills only mock draft, I had them going with Kenneth Grant. Now, I think you can maybe insert a different name in there. A Derek Harmon, I think, would be an underrated candidate from Oregon. You look at what they have on the interior. Daquan Jones, who I was a big fan of, covered in Tennessee for a long time. He's certainly not getting younger, better suited to play a rotational role. I think they got to get something else in there next to Ed Oliver. And look, it's a copycat league. You look at the way the Philadelphia Eagles beat the Kansas City Chiefs in the Super Bowl. It was by applying pressure on Patrick Mahomes on a snap-by-snap basis, and it was by keeping a fresh rotation of bodies to get after him, right? I think Sean McDermott, as a defensive-minded head coach, certainly believes in that. And the Bills, it's not new, right? Like, they've tried to keep a deep rotation of pass rushers. They've always invested in the position, at least in my opinion, since McDermott and Bean have been there. But certainly, I think they're going to keep refilling the cupboard, if you will. It'll be D lineman at 30, whether that's edge or D tackle. I think you could make the argument for either or. And then I expect to see an early emphasis on the defensive backfield as well. Cornerback is one I anticipate they'll try to address in the second round. Maybe an outside chance. That's the first-round pick if they don't like anything else on the board. But corner, safety, edge, D tackle, I think this is going to be a defense-heavy draft for them. And quite frankly, I think it should be. We've seen what Josh Allen can do with the weapons. We know the offensive line is in terrific standing. So, yes, it's going to be a defense-heavy draft in Buffalo.
Do you have a receiver you like for them by chance in the middle rounds, maybe?
Oh, Lord. I mean, it depends where they take one. I'm a big fan of Jalen Royals from Utah State.
Yep.
I think he's not getting enough attention. I had them going with a receiver in the fourth round in my mock. I had a guy like Kobe Hudson out of UCF. I think he's a high upside guy. He's quick-footed. He's got great size. He's a good route runner. And I know they brought in Josh Palmer and Curtis Samuel. I think those are short-term solutions. They should look to get a receiver in the middle round. One that I absolutely love is Torrey Horton out of Colorado State. I think would be a great fit for them in the middle rounds. He's been a little forgotten about. He had the injury this past year. This was a 1,000-yard guy in 2022 and 2023. By the way, he recovered in time for the combine, ran a great 40-yard dash. Don't sleep on him. If he's there in the 109, 132 for Buffalo, which I think there's a chance he's there, that would be a steal for them. That guy's going to come in and play good football.
Torrey Horton. I like Royals a lot, too. I think he's visiting or has visited the Bills.
Yep. I saw pictures